welcome everyone to episode 15 of Wicky's Cricket Podcast. This is a huge one. We're focusing on one thing and one thing only, the World Cup final between India and Australia. So Shane, speak a little bit of sense before I go on and on and on about my rambling rants.
Hi, Ragul. Hi, everyone. We're here. We're finally here. We're recording this on the Friday, much like we promised a little bit earlier in the week. Just 2 days away from the World Cup final for 2023. 2 days ago, India overcame New Zealand at Mumbai in the first semi-final. They put on 400. New Zealand looked like they were going to chase that at one point, but Mohammad Shami did what Mohammad Shami's been doing this whole tournament. He pulled it back and he took 7 for, and now India are in the final of a home World Cup. And this was just last night, but uh, Australia edged out South Africa in a very, very close game. It was a difficult pitch, difficult batting conditions. SA put on 212, very close to the 213. That was the score that both teams finished on in the 99 World Cup semi-final. And Australia huffed and puffed, and South Africa pushed them all the way. And there was like a lot of spin and a lot of pace, like a lot of very good pace bowling. But eventually Australia got over the line, and it was Captain Pat Cummins who did it for them in the end. And now we have an India-Australia final on Sunday. We're 2 days away from that.
Oh man, I'm literally you could probably half see it on the camera if I did try to show you, but I'm literally getting chills. I was saying to Shane, it's still 2 days to go, and I'm feeling sick just talking about it. I don't know how the players cope with the pressure, because even as a fan, 2 days out, I'm nervous. I'm feeling literally a little bit sick in my stomach just thinking and talking about it. But let's actually move on to the games, because I'm actually super excited to talk about. I'm obviously, as you guys know, I'm a passionate Indian cricket fan, but I think seeing that semi-final was a huge win for everyone who follows cricket. Really, the India New Zealand game was actually, I thought, really, really good as well. But yesterday's game was just old school, man. It was awesome.
Yeah.
As an 8-year-old kid, I actually watched the 99 World Cup, the whole thing. I used to live in India back then. I think it was either school holidays or I just wasn't going to school, because I was definitely watching these games every single ball. And it was
Singles
absolutely
holidays.
epic that Australia South Africa game in 19, both games, but especially the 213 tie. So absolute epic last night. Awesome game of cricket. I think the only sad news is that most of Australia wouldn't have seen it. It finished up at almost 4 a.m. and the India game finished at just after 4 a.m. I think. So, but I think I had a handful of mates and a couple of people on our Discord still checking it out. Which reminds me, if you do want to check out our pod, our data tools, not just for cricket, we've also got NBA, NFL, we've got BBL Supercoach, we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up. If you want to check it all out, it is all free. Google Wicky Linktree. But so Shane, I'll let you get into it.
Sure. It's been a year. I mean, with the away test series in India, away Ashes, World Cup in India, it's been a lot of sleepless nights for Australia fans in 2023. They're going to have one more on Sunday. 20 years later, India, Australia, and another World Cup final, and the roles are almost pretty much reversed this time. Um, it's India who are sort of the dominant, who've been on the dominant run, who've beaten Australia in the league match, um, and Australia are the ones who've made hard work of this World Cup at various points. Um, it wasn't a very pretty win for them last night, um, and it was, and we've discussed Australia's problems quite a bit on this show. It's been sort of widely discussed everywhere, in fact. But here they are with problems in another World Cup final. I think this is their eighth World Cup final now. If South Africa had won, it would have been their first, which kind of tells you like the sort of the difference in the two teams competing for a place there. Um, I kind of want to just talk about the occasion a little bit. I think this is an achievement for Australia, regardless of what happens on Sunday. They made the final of a World Cup in Asia when, with no second spinner, the batting supposedly being terrible and not being in form, the bowling not sort of clicking together all at once, riding into the final on the back of Zampa. And I think yesterday was actually the first time that we actually saw Stark and Hazelwood just like going at it from both ends, and the ball was moving and there was under lights, etc. Like we actually saw um, what they're capable of. But I think it is quite an achievement for Australia to even be in this position.
Yep. No, 100%. I was just going to say, Sushant, I know you've got a couple of points about, well, looking back. I think I'm going to sort of go through those points really quickly because I want to move to the game that we're previewing, right? But fully agree with what you just said. I think it frustrates, like, I think the grade cricket do such a good job of covering Aussie cricket because they're able to sort of capture the mood, but actually talk about the game quite well as well. And one thing that they said, they keep talking about the T20 World Cup that Australia won in 21. So a couple of good tosses and they got the job done kind of thing. And I love that because it's Australia. Like the thing that no one will take away from Australia is their grit and their fight, but they just haven't had the correct approach that England and India have had to white ball cricket in most people's eyes. But they get the job done. You know, they won in 21. I'm trying to think what happened in last year's World Cup, T20 World Cup. I can't remember, but basically they have literally gotten to this point all through grit. As you said, like just having Zampa, no actual second spinner. The batting has got Smith and Labuschagne in there in the at 4 and 5. That is just so different to what like most teams are trying to do at the moment in 50 over cricket. And I think just very quickly going to India, New Zealand. We'll get straight to Australia, India, Australia after this. But I think what really impressed me about that India, New Zealand game, the fact that it wasn't one-way traffic. You know, India scored 400. But as a fan, if you said that you weren't nervous throughout the chase, you're lying. I definitely was. So it was an awesome game. I think there was the crap that was put out in the media about the pitch. Just, oh my God, that pissed me off. So like it's some, yeah. So it's just like, in Australia, I feel like, because of the time zone, mainly, like a lot of the country hasn't gotten behind the World Cup. And it's almost like the news in Australia is trying to just find ways to make it relevant, at least get people talking. So they'll bring stuff up like the pitches, or they'll bring stuff up, oh, it's going to rain out. And it's just so frustrating to see that when there's a really good contest coming up. So I will say, like, from a pitch point of view, you saw the best part of 730 runs scored in Mumbai. And then in Kolkata, you had like a thriller with the first team scoring 213. And obviously every single ball of that last 30 overs or whatever it was of Australia, South Africa was a contest. Like absolutely amazing cricket. And I think like taking the bias away from it, like I have no loyalty towards Indian bloody curators of the BCCI or whatever, right? But just, yeah, like obviously India like cops a bit of crap for having rank turners or whatever in test matches. But I think it's like a really easy thing to say for fans that don't watch a lot of cricket. Oh, Indian pitches, haha. But what frustrates the hell out of me is that, like, I actually don't, like, living in Australia, don't get to watch a lot of the IPL or a lot of Indian cricket in India. But it's like, look at the World Cup. You've had grounds that have been super high scoring. You've had the Lucknow and Kolkata, maybe one other like relatively low scoring. Obviously, you're going to have pitches that spin in India. There's been some really nice pace and movement under lights as well. There's just been such good variety. You've seen like a couple of upsets, but you've also seen like a really clear progression of India undefeated. South Africa had only lost to what's called Netherlands and India. And Australia had only lost to the two teams above them. New Zealand had lost to the three teams above them. So I think just like every way you look at this World Cup, there's obviously a few negatives you can talk about, but it's progressed really nicely. We've had really good variety. It's hard to argue that, like, it's pretty easy to argue that obviously the two best teams are in the final. Australia and South Africa were, in my eyes, very close. I thought South Africa was the better team on paper. Being 4 for 30 or whatever they ended up being, it was going to be very difficult for them to win. I just think it's been like a really nice World Cup. Like, there's been some boring bits, but in any long tournament, you're going to have that. So anyways, I was really happy with the India New Zealand semi-final, the World Cup that was. Shall we get straight into the game, Sushane? Because there's going to be a lot that we want to talk about just with that.
Yeah, yeah. Just mentioned the New Zealand semi-final, and India were in trouble on Wednesday for a fairly good chunk of the middle of New Zealand's chasing innings. But honestly, given what they saw last night in Calcutta, I don't think they will or should be too worried for the final. Are you feeling confident getting this Australia as an India fan?
I think I assume we have a few rugby league fans in Australia watching this. I would equate this World Cup final to the Panthers run in the NRL. Like it's taken them, like, for a little bit of time. I'll take my bias away from it. India is better. Every single aspect of this World Cup has been better than Australia. The batting is better. The batting is more aggressive. The bowling is better. The bowling has more variety. The fielding, I would say, is obviously roughly similar. There's no huge discrepancies there. Plus, India have not only home ground advantage, which I don't think I was saying this to someone the other day. There's no huge advantage in the pitch, I would say. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what the pitch might play like. I think it's more the fact that all the Indians play the IPL, travel around India. Some of the Aussies do as well, but I think just like familiarity with the grounds and the conditions and stuff, and obviously the crowd. I think it's like literally like the Panthers going through this NRL season, and then they came up
Mm.
against the Broncos, who were actually all like I wouldn't say as good, but they were good enough to compete. But you just knew that the Panthers are just that perfect team, right? And as you know, in all sport, it's the perfect team doesn't always win. So I'm not saying India will win, but as you just said, it's like every way you could analyze the game, India is better. So I think it's, but yeah, what are your
Um,
thoughts?
who's So I think two things that sort of come up to this. One, who do you think is going to be the Ezra Man for Australia in the final? And
Mm.
uh, if someone does have a bit of a run like that, do you think it'll be enough to win the game?
No. So I think like I've been having like chats with my mates around this, right? And it's funny you mentioned the 2003 final. I remember staying up with my mum late on a whatever night it was, very late in Australian time, right? And I remember that final, and it's almost this sense of like the 2003 World Cup final, the 2015 semi at the SCG. I was there in person. It's
Mm,
almost that
mm,
sense of like, crap, Australia bat first. They're probably in 2015. I think maybe they were slightly better. 2003, it was just this sense of like, oh no, Australia bat first, go big. We're never in this, right? Like it's the
yeah.
hope that used to kill you as an Indian fan. But I think
Mm,
now and I've said this before, like the real test here is like India is the better team. India has the home conditions. India's been playing really well. There's no weaknesses. And I think two things that stand out to me is that the fact that India have two spinners compared to Australia's Zampa and Maxwell, who's done an excellent job, but isn't a
mm,
full-time spin bowler. I think that's one clear edge. And I think the other clear edge is that India's number 4 and 5 of Shreyas Iyer and KL Rahul everyone would have had something to say about one of those two pre-tournament, but you can't say they've
mm,
let you down, right? You really can't say
yeah.
they've let you down. So I think those are the two places that India have a clear advantage. Your Iyer and your Rahul versus your Smith and Labuschagne. Reputation-wise, obviously, like the Aussies are a great Test match batsman, but those to me are the key areas of what's it called of advantage to India. And you said if Australia does get on a bit of a run and things go against the grain a little bit, let's just say India bat first and they are 2 for 30, right? I still think
Mm,
like you'd hope that one of Rohit or Kohli are in, but even if they
yeah.
both get out, I genuinely still would be confident with Gill, Iyer, Rahul, and a bit of Sky and Jadeja towards the end. I just think they go so
Mm,
deep with both their batting and bowling that I can legitimately say I'm confident. I'm still nervous. Australia, full of good cricketers, great personalities, and have a ton of fight. So yes, I'm nervous from
mm.
that point of view, but from man-on-man skill point of view, it's not a contest for me. What do you reckon?
Interesting, really, really interesting stuff. So, I mean, it's funny you say India have depth in batting when their long tail was held up as a sign of potential weakness at the start of this tournament. But I
Mm,
think that actually brings me to my next point quite nicely. So we made this whole thing about South Africa are just invincible batting first, and they did bat first in the
mm,
semi-final after winning the toss. Obviously, conditions were very different to how they batted first and put on huge totals in big games in other games before. But it just really came down to something quite simple for me. Australia managed to knock out South Africa despite chasing, despite how good um, um, South Africa have been batting first. India haven't chased in this World Cup in a long time. I don't know if you've sort of reflected on that watching the various games. Their last chase was against New Zealand in that game at Dharamshala, if you remember. That was an age ago.
yep. That was their
Um,
fifth game because both teams were four all going four each, 4-0 each, sorry,
yeah,
going to that game. So four
exactly,
games in a row they batted first. Yep.
exactly. Yes, that's right. So, and so the final is going to be at Ahmedabad, and I mean, again, take small sample sizes, etc., with a grain of salt.
Mm,
But this is a ground where at this World Cup we've had 3 out of 4 wins chasing, and the only team to win here batting first was actually Australia against England. Um, So would you rather, and given all of this stuff, and given what you just mentioned about the Indian middle order, would you rather India bat first on Sunday, or are you confident that that nothing will stop this team at
I
all?
think I think
Bat first
again,
chase. Do
like
you think? Do you think it?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you think they need the toss with them in the final, or do you think they can
No.
just win regardless?
No, no,
Okay.
no. So, like, generally, yes, I'm a very pessimistic, nervous, anxious fan, right? But I think this time it's taken out because if India bat first, I'm obviously relatively confident they can get that sort of 320, 350 type score. I don't actually, just one word answer. If you had to say the stadium, the Ahmedabad stadium, would it be closer to like a Lucknow and a Kolkata in terms of like lower scoring, slower service, or like a Dharamshala and a Mumbai? What would you say be closer to, or smack bang in the middle?
Um, And probably in the middle, I mean, I'd say more like a 280, 300 kind of thing. I mean, that's what we've
Sure,
seen in this World Cup at least. So
sure,
that's
sure.
my reference point. I think we've
Yep,
seen a few 280s there. Australia won with 286 here, batting first.
yep.
I think that New Zealand chase was also
They
286.
got
Those are
that
the
really
kinds of
easily
scores we've
though.
seen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the
yeah,
thing with small sample size. I don't want to go off topic too much,
yeah.
but that's why I'm like
Mm.
really conscious about speaking about that. But I think it's a good gauge of if you think it's more of a middling pitch. Well, we just had a Zoom call just before, and instead of talking about work, we spent 10 minutes talking about the final. But the only thing that would actually scare me is if this final was at a slow low Lucknow or a Kolkata, which I know sounds silly, but it almost reminds you of when India create rank turners at home and how they got embarrassed in
Mm.
2012 with Swan and Panesar. And then there was who was it?
Happened
Steve
earlier this year
O'Keefe.
at Indore.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's like it just pisses me off when India don't realize that they are such a good team from 1 to 11. And if you have like a relatively true surface, I'm not saying create a road. I'm just saying like a true
Mm.
surface where 300 could be chased down. Like you want to be sort of thinking like, hopefully it's a good surface. It's a relatively like if India can bat first, I reckon like a 280 type score, and I'd be anxious. Obviously, on the other side of 300, you feel happy as a fan, and like a 350 and you're like, yes, confident, right? Like it's not
Mm.
Mumbai where it's a smaller ground, a flatter pitch. If it's
Yeah,
somewhere in the
yeah.
middle, and you ask me like, does the toss matter? I think for India it doesn't, only because batting first, they've done it the last few games. They are a really good batting lineup. I think what I thought was a weakness when Hardik Pandya got out, which was, oh no,
Mm.
we don't have that safety net, has ended up being, it's almost like India has learned how to play knowing that you don't have a number 8 that can bat. So like that
Yep.
Rohit's, I won't go on about it all
Yep.
over again, but last pod I was so proud of Rohit, the leader, carving out this role as the
Yep.
attacker, the aggressor. He did it in the semi-final. Unselfish cricket, love that. But then you also know that Kohli has literally said in the media, "I will bat this way." A, because it's my style, but B, we don't bat deep. So I think like everyone
Yep.
else except for Rohit don't have like a silly batting style, and it actually works out kind of
Mm.
perfectly because it makes sure that India do bat deep. And once it gets to that sort of 40 over mark, I think people forget, or like it's not naturally normal to us cricket fans that now there's 5 fielders out in the deep for the last 10 overs. It's not as easy to go hard. So it's like India do it perfectly where they're like naturally they kind of take the game deep and just sort of are fluent without being silly because they don't have that extra or eighth number 8 that can bat. But it actually suits them perfectly. So that makes me feel happy about
Mm.
India batting first. And with India chasing, it's like you literally have the greatest chaser of all time. Oh, I'm getting so nervous talking about this. But yeah, like either option
Yeah.
just makes me feel confident. So I don't think it's the toss that's the
Interesting.
worry. I think it's more
Yeah.
if it's a slow, low pitch, surprisingly, that's when I'd be a little bit nervous. Yeah.
Interesting. Really interesting. I think that bit about batting in a certain way because you know that there's a long tail is really important. It's something that probably playing on their minds a little bit when they go out to bat and approach the innings.
Mm.
Just probably my last point for the game. And this is kind of like 2 points which are kind of related, like 2 points which I'm kind of combining because they're kind of related. One thing that was really important in that semi-final last night was the fast start that Travis had and David Warner provided, um, which ended up being absolutely critical in the end because they only got home by 3 wickets. And you just think about how much more trouble Australia would have been in had Head and Warner not got those quick runs. And I think about What if there's another big opening stand in the final? What if Australia are batting first? What if when you have to chase in front of 100,000 in a home World Cup final when they haven't chased in this World Cup for like a month now? And I think about how quickly sometimes things unravel with India. I watched India a lot over the last I don't know, I don't even know how many years, and it's just like you can rely on them to sometimes when things just start spiraling out of their control. And I think about the middle phase of New Zealand's chasing innings in the semi-final, and I think about Rohit's body language in that. And you remember that Jadeja throw
Yep.
the overthrows because he was kind of getting frustrated, and Rahul missed it and it went for four. And you could kind of sense that it was sort of getting to them a little bit. India's bowling has, I think, in the last couple of games, both against New Zealand in the semi-final and against Netherlands in the last group game, has at
Mm.
various points shown itself to be quite hittable. I think there are definitely runs there, even if the surface is slightly friendly for batting. I think there are
Yep.
runs to be had there, and if those runs come quickly and at the top from Head and Warner, um, I'm very very keen to see India's response to that.
Yep.
And I think
Well,
just like
but-
just not having chased, not having chased in this World Cup, chasing in a home World Cup final to win the trophy
mm.
after 12 years, and to like in a final against Australia after 20 years, and all of that stuff. I wonder if that'll play on their mind a little bit. We were talking about this, right? It's just
Yep.
about, can you perform well on the day? India are undefeated in this World Cup, but what if they lose that final? I think that
Well,
that feeling will always be there for a little bit for India fans.
sure. Well, there's two things I want to say. Firstly, I'm happy that you addressed you said what you just said, so I'll quickly address that. And I think we'll just finish off with a couple of minutes. I promise there won't be
Yes.
a rant, but I think just about what this means. So, firstly, let's address the final actual cricketing point of how India's bowling and how they've been. I think the fact that that Williamson Mitchell partnership against India in the last game, I think that's completely okay. Mumbai is a small ground and it's a bloody road. So I think like if you were silly enough to think that it's all going to go your way and you're going to score 400 and New Zealand's going to crumble for 180, I think I didn't expect that. I'm pretty sure I said in the last pod, the thing that I'm worried about is New Zealand's main top four batsmen. They are genuinely really strong batsman. It's a flat pitch. It's a small ground. Like what not. It's not all going to be playing against Sri Lanka and rolling them for 50 every time. So I think that's okay. I think the game against that was Netherlands, where okay, fine. Like they were just. It was literally a practice drill. So like I'm not stressed about that at all. But I think this time, again, five good solid bowling options. If the last cricketing point that I will make is, if you like Australia's top three is whew, like that's scary, like Head, Warner, Marsh, that is scary. And like fully respect that as an opposition fan. But I also think last night when South Africa was bowling, I was thinking, I am scared of the thought of them, but against quality bowling attacks, that's fine. Like Head has been so impressive the last couple of years. Warner's done this for a decade, and Marsh has been elite the last 3 or 4 years. But I just think against a quality bowling attack, pace at the top, spin through the middle, I'm like not as scared of those guys. And there's no one that's scared of Smith and Labuschagne. They're not getting 80 or 60 balls or something like that. They're accumulators, right? There's nothing to be scared of. And Maxwell, as I keep saying, he got a 200 against Afghanistan, 100 against Netherlands. It's again, he could do anything on his day, but it's not to say that like he's in great form or something like that. It's like I'm okay with that. Like that's fine. Relax. So that's my overall thoughts on Australia and sort of India's bowling and stuff. I don't think there's anything to be worried about. Because I think like there's just such a stark difference of when you put India's bowling attack against a good lineup. Like look at what they've done to the teams around them. New Zealand's probably the team that's come closest to them, and they've lost by 70 runs this time, and I forgot what the margin was last time. Well, India were chasing, right? But I think I think we'll be fine. Like from a cricket point of view, I think no real concerns, but we'll just have to wait and watch. But I think the last thing that you said around whether it's India in the field and you've got to clean up the last couple of Aussie wickets, you just know like a Josh Inglis or a Pat Cummins will just stick around and irritate you to the very end, or whether it's India in a chase and like the pressure of potentially Kohli having to do it one last time for India, or
Mm.
it could be young blood, it could be Surya Kumar Yadav, the number one T20 batsman, or he should be anyways, out there in a close chase, and maybe it's Sky and who's our number 8, like a Sky and Shami or something like that to take it to the end. Like I think whoever it is, I think the sense of like what this means, and it's funny, like in India, your cricket is all over the media, it's all over the newspapers. Everyone you talk to, something will come up. It's like, oh, India's in the final, etc., etc. And it's funny, like, funnily enough, like I've been obsessed with cricket my whole life, but I'm pretty sure no one else in my family gives two shits about cricket, and they all live in India. So I often get like really frustrated when, for me, as always, it's not just the game; it's what it means to other people, etc., etc. And I've gone on so many times. I forgot if I've done this on the pod, but just a rant around wherever you do live in the world, it's like the Indian cricket team is just that connection to your childhood, your family, or whatever it is, right? And I think that point you made around 20 years is just so important. 2003, I think I've told you about a couple of the Indian fans, the follower groups and stuff. Back then you'd go to Indian cricket games, there'd barely be any Indian fans. India would go overseas and struggle. There's the Bhogle and Harsha Bhogle and Ashwin Kutu Stories, or whatever their thing is called, the YouTube series is excellent, where they cover World Cup to World Cup, and they specifically have a section around culture, which I absolutely love. So I think it's people living in India may not notice the importance of this for people who live outside of India, but I can tell you, as someone who's lived outside of India since the late 90s or whatever, like these things are just huge. Like seeing India on the big stage perform against in Australia, like everyone respects Australia so much, right?
The final boss of cricket.
Yeah, and like the ability to sort of like get one over them on the big stage, it just means that your average Indian IT migrant goes to work on a Monday morning just puffing their chest out a little bit more. And like for me, as I always say to you guys, for me, cricket is a much more than what happens on the field. So I do hope from a storyline perspective and selfishly India get the job done. But hey, if they don't, I got to say, like from again, your average person will go to work and maybe like in India, it'll be a sense of sadness or a little bit of deflation. But I got to say, just one last cricketing point. Ash, our data person, was saying, "Oh, India's still been great. They won 10 in a row. They'll still be remembered for great players and a great team." I think that's bullshit. Like, you don't win the tournament, you don't get remembered for shit. I think if Australia do win the World Cup, it is a ridiculously impressive effort. They will always be remembered for their previous World Cups anyway, but I think they'll go down in history as just like a legendary bunch of characters, because like everyone will know that winning away from home as well, that'll always be remembered in this time. So I hope India win the World Cup and we can do a podcast in person when I'm in India in a few days, and we can talk about what this means for Kohli and Rohit's legacy and all the rest of it, what it means for Indian fans all over the world. But it's just we'll have to see. We'll have to see on the next pod.
I think we could just keep going. Honestly, like there's just so much we could talk about. Probably a great place to wrap up. One word. Who's going to win on Sunday?
India.
Yeah. Okay. I think India will do it as well. I think they'll do it. I think they'll win it.
Awesome. Nice way to wrap up. Anyways,
that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Shane. All right, we're going to wrap up, guys. If you have enjoyed our stuff, obviously check it out. Just Google Wicky Linktree. It is the end of a chapter for, I guess, the content that we've been putting out, but by no means the end of it. We might have to take a break for a week or so. I'll be flying overseas and stuff next week, but we will have the BBL Super Coach Pod, NBA and NFL stuff going out early next week, and we'll resume the pod in person. If it's not next Thursday, it'll definitely be the week after. So we'll have the cricket pod going throughout the summer. There'll be Women's Big Bash finals coming up. Men's Big Bash, and a bunch of other cricket over the Aussie summer, of course. But I hope you guys enjoy the World Cup final, whoever you go for. And a hungover version of myself will be on Discord on Monday talking about the game regardless.